Hi everybody, this is SAT practice test number 8, section 3, the no calculator section is the actual test administered in January of 2017, and let's jump right into problem 1. In the equation above, what is the value of x? Taking a look at the equation, you're going to be combining like terms, so all the x terms first, 3x plus x plus x plus x, total of 6x, and then minus 3 minus 2, so basically negative 3 minus 2 will be minus 5, is equal to, we'll keep the x's in front again, we'll do x plus x is 2x plus 7. Subtract 2x from both sides, we'll leave you with 4x minus 5 is equal to 7. Add 5 to both sides, we'll leave you with 4x is equal to 12. Divide both sides by 4, leave it with x is equal to 12 divided by 4 is equal to 3. That is your answer. And it's here as D. Problem number 2, the graph above shows the distance traveled D in feet by a product on a conveyor belt m minutes after the product is placed on the belt. Which of the following equations correctly relates D and m? So they're giving you a linear relationship up here, and what they're testing you on is that you know the y equals mx plus b form of a line. So what is y equals mx plus b? B is the intercept. Here you can see that the y-intercept, or the d-intercept, y is d in this case, is 0. So b is 0. M is rise over run. It's the slope. And you can see that for every run of 1, you have a rise of 2, and it's linear, so that continues, which means that m is equal to 2. So you can write this out as y is equal to 2x plus 0, so it's just y is equal to 2x. You can put this in terms of d and m instead of y and x, and it will be d is equal to 2m. And you see that that is right here as answer A. Now you can also see that you could quickly eliminate C and D because we calculated B first. It's easiest to see that the intercept is 0, so C and D are obviously wrong. The answer B is trying to trip you up if you mistakenly thought that slope was run over rise, but it's rise over run. I highly recommend doing a whole bunch of exercises with y equals mx plus b to drill this in, be able to do it super fast, get the correct answer A. Problem 3, the formula below is often used by project managers to compute E, the estimated time to complete a job, where O is the shortest completion time, P is the longest completion time, and M is the most likely completion time. They give all that right here. Which of the following correctly gives P in terms of E, O, and M? And I think this problem is a perfect example, and I'll probably use it in a later video as an example, of the SAT giving you too much information, and this is really testing your ability to throw out information you don't need. For instance, they give you an equation, and the most important thing to read is the sentence right before the question mark. So it's which of the following correctly gives P in terms of E, O, and M, and you can get that from just this equation and this sentence. You can completely eliminate everything up here and still be able to solve the problem. You don't need any of this. And with time, with enough practice tests, you'll learn that, read through everything once quickly, read through what's right before the question mark a couple of times, and you can usually realize that there's a whole bunch of stuff in what you previously read that you don't need. Like I said, I'll probably do another video on that, but that's all you need for right now. To get to the actual problem, you have to rearrange this equation in terms of P because they're looking for P. So let's start by multiplying both sides by 6. So that'll leave you with 6e is equal to O plus 4m plus p. Subtract O plus 4p from both sides. That'll leave you with 6e minus O minus 4m is equal to p. Correctly gives p in terms of the other one, so that's all you need to know. And it looks like that is answer A. A is correct. Okay, I had to take a break from recording there. I'm back. Problem 4, first geometry problem of this test. So in the figure above, RT is equal to TU. What is the value of X? So they're looking for this angle here, the angle X. And anytime you see a geometry problem like this where they give you a diagram, you can assume you're going to be solving pretty much all the unsolved angles to get to X will probably be the last one you have to find. So you can see that X is part of this smaller triangle. So you can bet that you're going to be finding this angle here in the corner R, and this angle here, which we'll call Y just to give it a name of that point that we'll be using later. So two things when you're solving a geometry problem involving angles that you have to know coming in is that every triangle, the three angles of every triangle is equal to 180 degrees in a triangle. And a line is itself 180 degrees. So if you have a line here, or let's say there are two lines that come together, this angle must equal 180 degrees as well. Those 2 points, you should know that from your geometry class, and I might do a geometry review later that hits those 2 points as well. But to jump into this problem, let's start with the information they give us. In the figure above, RT is equal to TU, which means that this line here, RT, is equal to this line here, TU. That defines RTU as an equilateral triangle. It means that this angle R is equal to this angle U. So we can just say that this is, the angle R, and we'll call this is also, it's labeled U, but it's equal to the angle R as well. So we know that there's 180 degrees in that RTU triangle, and that's equal to the one we know, that 114 in the corner T, plus 2R, right? It's R plus U, but we know that U is equal to R, so we can call that 2R. Solve for R. You have 180 minus 114, that's 66, is equal to your 2R. Divide both sides by 2. That'll leave you with R is equal to 33 degrees. And that gives you 1 point in your smaller triangle that we're going to solve, that R is equal to 33 degrees. Now let's take a look at this STY triangle. Take a look at the STY triangle. You know from the given that any line is equal to 180 degrees, that you have 114 on one side. This angle in here must equal 180 is equal to 114 plus that unknown angle. So subtract 114 from both sides. We just did this in the last one at 66 is equal to that unknown angle. So right here we have 66 degrees. And that allows us to solve the STY triangle. Once again, 180 degrees in a triangle is equal to 66 plus 31 plus that Y angle. So 180 minus 66 plus 31 is equal to 83. Y is equal to 83. You can write that in here. 83 degrees, and that gives you everything you need to solve that RYV triangle, which is that X angle that we're actually looking for. So your final equation, 180 is equal to 83 plus 33 plus X. Subtract 83 and 33 from 180. That will give you 60. X is equal to 64 degrees. Again, this is no calculator section, so if you're not a mental math kind of person, you might have to write out those subtractions. Not a problem at all. You will come up with the right solution of X is equal to 64 degrees. Problem 5. The width of a rectangular dance floor is W feet. The length of the floor is 6 feet longer than its width. Which of the following expresses the perimeter in feet of the dance floor in terms of W? Let's draw ourselves a rectangular dance floor here to visualize. There's our rectangle. The width is W feet. So we have W. The length of the floor is 6 feet longer than its width. Let's just call it L and L. And they've defined for us L is equal to width W plus 6. So we have longer than. So we have W plus 6 equal to W plus 6. Okay, so now we're looking for the perimeter. Perimeter is simply the perimeter of any shape is the length you'd walk if you walk the entire outside of that shape. So you have one width plus one length plus another width plus another length. So that looks like W plus L plus W plus L. That simplifies. So that perimeter is equal to 2W plus 2L. Let's make this all in terms of W. We know that they gave us L is equal to W plus 6. So you have perimeter is equal to 2W plus 2W plus 6. Multiply that 2 out. You have perimeter is equal to 2W plus 2W plus 6 times 2 is 12. Plus 12. Simplify that even further. 2W plus 2W is equal to 4W plus 12. That's your answer. Perimeter is 4W plus 12. And that's an option. B is the correct answer. Problem number 6. Which of the following consists of the y-coordinates of all the points that satisfy the system of inequalities above? What they're trying to do in this problem is really trip you up by thinking, oh, system of inequalities, I need to think about all these crazy, flipping the signs. But no, what they're actually asking here with all these words, all the points that satisfy the system of inequalities above, all the y-coordinates, is solve for y. They could have simplified this entire paragraph to say solve the above for y, but they just want to check that you're not going to get panicked when you see system inequalities. So how do we solve this for y? Your second inequality here has 2x equal to 5. You can take this 2x, plug it right into your first inequality. So you have y is greater than 2x minus 1. You know what 2x is from your second inequality. It's 5. So you can leave that y is greater than 5 minus 1. Solve that. Y, 5 minus 1 is 4. And that is your answer. And it is as simple as that. Just know that when you see satisfy the system of inequalities, that means solve for. And in this case, they want you to solve for y. That's all there is to it. All right, problem 7. What is the solution set? The equation above. And when you take a look at this equation, it's solvable for x. You know that you could solve it for x. But if you take a quick glance at the solutions that they give you, a, b, c, and d, you see that only 3 numbers show up, -1, 5, and 0. So when I take a look at this problem, there's a square root involved, probably factoring. And I know that the alternative is there's only 3 that I could have to plug in. I'm just going to start plugging these numbers in. It's going to be far more time efficient in the SAT setting to plug in -1, to plug in 5, possibly have to plug in 0. Even doing that 3 times is probably going to be faster than solving that equation. So let's do just that. We'll start by plugging in this -1, this answer A, into that equation. You have square root of 2, plug in -1 for A. 2 times -1 plus 6 plus 4 is equal to x plus 3. Simplify under the square root, you have -2 plus 6 plus 4 is equal to, whoops, I forgot to plug in here. We have -1 plus 3. So under the square root, -2 plus 6 is equal to square root of 4 plus 4 is equal to -1 plus 3 is equal to 2, 3 minus 1. Square root of 4 is equal to 2 plus 4 is equal to 2. Right there we see 2 plus 4, 6 is equal to 2. That's not correct. So -1 is not a solution to this equation, which means that -1 is not a solution. A is incorrect. -1 is not a solution. C is incorrect. -1 is not a solution. D is incorrect. That leaves you with only 5. Only B is remaining as an answer. 5 is a solution. Now right there you can circle that, move on with your test just to prove out that 5 is correct. If you had any doubts or time left at the end of the test, you want to double check your work. You could also plug in 5 into that solution set and verify that 5 is a solution. So I'll do that. I'll write that out here now. Square root of 2 times 5 plus 6 plus 4 is equal to 5 plus 3. Square root 2 times 5 is 10 plus 6 is 16. Plus 4 is equal to 8. Square root of 16 is 4 plus 4 is equal to 8. 8 is equal to 8. Yes, it is. 5 is a solution. That once again looks good for B. Once again, if you had time, you could check and do one last verification that 0 is also not a solution. That one's really easy to check. So square root of 2x times 0 is 0. So square root of 6 plus 4 is equal to 3. Already you can see that this is incorrect. Square root of 6 will be some number, but 4 is greater than 3 already. So this is not a solution to the problem. 0 is not a solution. B is the correct answer. Okay, on that last problem, I jumped to using the solutions and plugging in to find the solution. If anyone would like to see that solved out, give me a comment. I can do a separate video on how to solve that problem, to actually solve for x rather than plugging in. But on to problem 8. So we have which of the following expressions is equivalent to f of x divided by g of x for x is greater than 3. So you're looking for f of x divided by g of x. When you look at the forms that the solutions take here, you see things like x times x minus 3, x times x plus 3. You know you're going to have to factor f of x and g of x to get your solution in those forms. Let's go ahead and do that here. So for f of x, you see that there's x in both terms. So you can simplify this to x times x squared minus 9. You can see that this can easily be factored. And I'm going to go pretty quick through these factors. If you want to see another video, again, another video on factoring that I can really go in depth into the methods here, let me know. But for now, I'm going to do them pretty quick for the purpose of this video. So we have x. Again, this is a perfect square. You have x. It's positive in front of the x squared term, so both the x's are positive here. You have 9, which has a whole square root of 3. So it'll be 3 on both sides, and because the middle is negative, one of these will be positive, and one of these will be negative, because negative 3 times positive 3 is equal to that negative 9. So that's your f of x factored out. G of x, you see that this can be factored. There's not an x in each term, so you can't go, there's no x to pull out, but it can be factored. So once again, the x squared term is positive, so both of these x's will be positive. You have negative 3 at the end. 3 is a prime number, so it'll be 1 and 3 at the end here. Because that's negative, you'll have one of these, you'll have a positive and a negative sign. And whether that's positive or negative is determined by this middle. You have negative 2 times the x. So you'll have negative 3 plus 1 is equal to that negative 2, which means that you have to have negative on the 3 and positive on the 1. That's going through that factoring pretty quick. Again, I can do a separate video all about factoring if anyone's interested. So now you have f of x and g of x both factored out. What they're looking for is this f of x divided by g of x is equal to, write in your factored solutions, x plus 3, x minus 3 divided by our factor g of x plus 1, x minus 3. And here's where we invoke that why they give you this x greater than 3, because if x were equal to 3, this term here would be equal to 0, which would make the denominator 0, which would make none of this work out. So they just avoid that problem by saying x is greater than 3. So what you can see here is that because that's non-zero, you can take this term here in the f of x and this term here, this x minus 3, those cancel out to be 1, which leaves you with that f of x divided by g of x is now equal to x times x plus 3 divided by x plus 1, which exists as answer D. You can go ahead and circle D as your answer. Problem 9, in the xy plane, the graph of the equation above is a circle. Point P is on the circle and has coordinates 10, negative 5. If PQ is the diameter of the circle, what are the coordinates of point Q? And looking at the equation they give you, this is the standard equation for a circle, and it's one of those things that you have to just know coming into the SAT. It's one of the ones to memorize. The standard equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to the radius squared, where h and k, the center of the circle, is equal to h comma k, and again, this is the radius of the circle. So in this case, they give you 1 point. They obviously give you the center because they give you this equation, and they give you 1 point on that circle. And what they're asking for is they're saying that this line from the point they give you to some other point is on the other side of the diameter of the circle. So drawing quickly, you have a circle like this, you have the center, they give you 1 point. They're saying that the other point is on the exact opposite side through the center of that circle. And since you have numbers, what I would do personally is draw this out on an XY graph. They say this is on an XY plane. You can go ahead and make yourself a graph to make this easier to visualize. So first we know the center. They have -6 here, +5 here. Those are inverse because the standard equation is -h, -k. So the center in our case is +6, -5. Let's go ahead and plot that out. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I absolutely do not guarantee this is to scale, but you have your center at 6, whoops, up here it is -5 because this is +5. So 6, -5. So x equal to 6, y is equal to -5. And we have r squared. R squared is equal to 16, which means that r is equal to the square root of 16, which is equal to 4. So this has a radius of 4. So you can put a point, to draw out where the circle is, you can put a point 4 over here and 4 up. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, this is not to scale, but your circle ends up looking, it's very non-circular, but something like that, right? Okay, so point P that they give you on the circle has coordinates 10, -5. So that means that this other point is that you're already at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 and -5. So it's on the same y as the center. So you have 10, -5. Here's point P. If PQ is the diameter of the circle, what are the coordinates of point Q? Remember, we are exactly opposite side of the circle. So you can go ahead back. From here to here, the length of the center is 4, because that's the radius. The length of this other side is another 4, and it's right here. The diameter is horizontal, which means that y, your point Q, your y is unchanged. So you have that -5 through the center. So right away you can start eliminating. B is not the answer because it does not have -5 in the y. D is not the correct answer because it does not have -5. And x is equal to this, whatever the x was on point P, which is 10. So you have right here 10 minus the diameter. And of course the diameter is 10. The diameter is 2 times the radius minus 2r. So you have 10 minus 2 times the radius we found over here was 4, which means that the x point of Q is 10 minus 2 times 4 is 8. 10 minus 8 is equal to 2, which means that point Q is 2, -5, and that is answer A. Problem number 10. A group of 202 people went on an overnight camping trip taking 60 tents with them. Some of the tents held 2 people each, the rest held 4 people each. Assuming the tents were filled to capacity and every person got to sleep in a tent, how many of the tents were 2-person tents? At any time in the SAT you see something like this where they're giving you quantities of 2 different things, in this case people and tents, what they're asking you to do is set up a system of equations and solve for some variable in that system of equations. In this case, one equation will be people and one equation will be tents. So let's start with that tent equations. You have the number of 2 people tents, which we can go ahead and call A, and the number of 4-person tenths, which we'll call B. So you have, they're defined in the problem, 60 tenths total is equal to the number of 2-person tenths plus the number of 4-person tenths. So that's the first equation in your system equation, the tenth equation. The next one will be your people equation. So you have 202 total people is equal to the number of people in 2-person tenths. So you have 2 times the number of 2-person tenths plus the number of people in 4-person tenths, which will be 4 times the number of 4-person tenths. And that right there is your system of equations. In the end, you're looking for how many people were in 2-person tenths. So in the end, you are solving for A. So what you're going to want to do is keep A as a variable. So solve this first equation for B. So you'll have B is equal to 60 minus A. That allows us to plug this B into the second equation of our system equations and leave it only in terms of A, which will allow us to solve for that A 2-person tenths. Let's do just that. We have 202 is equal to 2A plus 4 times, we're now plugging in 60 minus A. Go ahead and simplify that. 202 is equal to 2A plus 4 times 60 is 240 minus 4A. Combine those terms. 202 is equal to negative 2A, which is 2A plus negative 4A, negative 2A plus 240. Subtract 240 from both sides. 202 minus 240 is negative 38 is equal to negative 2A. Divide both sides by negative 2. Negative 38 divided by negative 2 is positive 19. So A is equal to 19. Again, reviewing what A is the number of 2-person tenths, and that is what we're looking for as our final solution. So that is available as answer C. C is the correct solution. Problem number 11. Which of the following could be the equation of the graph above? Taking a look at the graph, it's clearly complex, a higher order polynomial, not a line or parabola that you would have memorized the standard equation for. You won't know the standard equation for this one. So anytime that they give you, the SAT gives you a complex graph like this, there will be certain things that you're able to pull off the graph to help you out. And looking at the forms that the solutions take, they're factored solutions, so there will be basically 3 roots. In all of these, there will be 3 roots that you can get off of the graph. And that means where the graph crosses the x-axis, where y is equal to 0. On this graph, it happens that x is equal to negative 3. It touches the graph at x is equal to 0, and it crosses at x is equal to 2. So that means that y is equal to 0 is equal to this first root here, negative 3, which means there must be a term x plus 3, because negative 3 plus 3 will give you that 0. And this could be to any power, because 0 to any power is 0, right? So you don't know what power it could be to. On the middle one here, you have basically, think of this as x plus 0, which is just equal to x. Again, that could be to any power. So you have x plus 3 to any power, x to any power, and this last one, you will have x minus 2. Again, that could be to any power. So let's go ahead and compare these to what we have in our possible answers. We need x plus 3. A and B both have x plus 3. C and D do not have x plus 3 terms. So C and D are not possible solutions. A and B both do have the x minus 2 term, here and here, and they both have this x to some power term. So they have, the A has just x and B has x squared. Okay, so you've narrowed it down to A and B. How can you find which of those two is the correct solution? Now, there are a couple ways to go about this. Actually, there's multiple ways to go about this. The way I would personally do it involves some calculus. You could take the derivative and figure out where these minimums happen, where the inflection points on the graphs are. But you don't need calculus for the SAT. There's another way to solve this. Let's take a look at what the difference is between A and B. Disregarding the terms that are the same, this x minus 2, x plus 3 terms, and just look at what's different about these. You have y is equal to x in answer A, and then you know the rest of it. And B, you have y is equal to x squared, and then the rest of it. And that's the difference between, you know, line and parabola. And what really happens, where this is important, is on the negative side, right? Because the square turns a negative x into a positive number, right? So take a look at, for instance, in A, let's say at point -5, you know, when the x is negative, y will become more negative as you go to the left on the graph. As x becomes more negative, y will become more negative. Whereas with x squared, as you get higher and higher with negative numbers, those negative numbers will always become positive because they're squared. So when you're at x is equal to -5, your y will be equal to 25. So y will become more and more positive. So that's the difference between those two. And when you look at the graph you're given, you see that as you go more negative on the x graph, your y is still increasing. It's becoming more positive. If this were going the other way, as y were becoming more negative, as x were becoming more negative, y also became more negative, it would be A. But because the graph is actually getting more positive as x becomes more negative, your answer is actually B. If that doesn't make sense, leave a comment. I can go into more detail about the difference between those two. But the takeaway here is you're becoming more positive with y as x is becoming more negative. That means that B must be the correct solution. Problem 12, if 2a over b is equal to 1 over 2, what is the value of b over a? Pretty simple problem, easy to mess up if you try to go too fast. Let's just rewrite down here, 2a divided by b is equal to 1 over 2. Start by multiplying both sides by b. That puts b in the numerator. So 2a is equal to 1 times b is just b over 2. Multiply both sides by 2. I'll leave you with 4a is equal to b. Divide both sides by a to get that b over a. Now I'll leave you with 4 is equal to b divided by a. And that is b over a is what they're looking for. It's equal to 4. So D is your correct solution. Problem 13. Oil and gas production in a certain area dropped from 4 million barrels in 2000 to 1.9 million barrels in 2013. Assuming that the oil and gas production decreased at a constant rate, which of the following linear functions F best models of production in millions of barrels T year after the year 2000? And the tip-off is in this problem is they say linear function, which means you'll be invoking your equations of a line. In this case, the y is equal to mx plus b form, the slope-intercept form. And you can tell that looking at all these possible solutions, these are all in slope-intercept form, where you have the slope here and the intercept here. So in the problem, they basically give you 2 points. 4 million barrels is your y, and 2000 is your x, and 1.9 million barrels on your y, 2013 is your x. So from that point, you might be able to just jump into equations and start doing this. But if it's at all confusing, draw yourself out a plot. They're saying about t years after the year 2000. So your plot starts at the year 2000. And the other point that you have is the year 2013. Where in the year 2000, they were producing 4 million barrels. And in the year 2013, they were producing 1.9 million barrels. So they have a constant decrease like that, and that trend is supposed to continue. So find the slope of this line. Slope is equal to rise over run, which means the y of the final point, which is 1.9, right? Minus the y on the first point, which is 4, divided by the final point 2013 minus the first point 2000. So that's equal to 1.9 minus 4, negative 2.1 over 2013 minus 2000 is 13 years. So there's your slope. And your intercept is, since we're starting our graph right at 2000, your intercept is clearly 4. So let's take a look at the problems they give you, or at the answers they give you. All of them have an intercept of 4, so that doesn't help you. Now looking at the slope. Okay, the slopes are all, you can easily take this, they're all, none of them have decimals, right? Whereas our numerator has a decimal. So what you can do is you can take this slope, multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 10. So basically multiply this by 10 over 10 is the way to think about that. And that will make this negative 21 over 130. And that's valid because 10 over 10 becomes 1. So you can multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 10 to get you this negative 21 over 130 to become your slope. And in that case, you can take a look. C has that slope of negative 21 over 130, which means that C is your correct answer. Problem 14. How many solutions are there to the system of equations above? And they give, you can either have 4 solutions, 2 solutions, 1 solution, or no solutions. Now the first thing I'm going to talk about isn't strictly necessary for solving this problem, but it's a good visualization for you to understand what's happening and how you can end up with these different numbers of solutions. So let's take a look at the first equation in the system of equations. It has an x squared term in it, which means that that first equation is representing a parabola, right? So let's just say that's our xy. I have no idea what that parabola looks like, but I'll just draw a parabola on here that looks like that. So how can we get either 1, 0, 1, 2, 4, or 4 solutions to this problem? So this other equation here, y minus 5x plus 8, only has an x term. It does not have an x squared term, which means that we're dealing with a line in that case. So let's say this line looks something, again, I don't know what it looks like, but let's say it looks something like that. In that case, the line never intersects the parabola, which means there's no solution, there's no x where these intersect, which means that would mean that D would be correct. There's no solutions. Let's say that this line looked something like this, where it intersects at one point. That would be exactly one solution. Let's say instead this line looked like this. That would be an intersection at 2 points. And that would be exactly 2 solutions. Now, because we're dealing with a line and a parabola, there's no way for this to intersect more than 2 times. So a line and a parabola cannot intersect more than 2 times. So there's no way for A to be correct starting off. Now again, doing that allows you to eliminate A, but that thought exercise isn't necessary to really solve this problem, but I wanted to start off with that so that you got a visual about what we're actually solving for here. Okay, back to the system of equations. Anytime that they're asking you to solve a system of equations, the first thing you should look for, can I just plug one equation into the other? And in this case, it's easy to do so. The first equation is equal to y. You can easily just plug this information into the second equation for y. So your second equation is y minus 5x plus 8 is equal to 0. Plug the information in for y. That'll give you x squared plus 3x minus 7, just your first equation, minus 5x plus 8 is equal to 0. You can go ahead and simplify all that. We'll leave you with x squared. That's the only term. Combine these terms. So 3x minus 5x will be minus 2x. And then negative 7 plus 8 will be plus 1 is equal to 0. And then you're looking for a number solution, so you know that that can be factored. So in this case, we'll go ahead and factor. And I think I said on an earlier problem, I can do a more in-depth video on factoring. I'll go through this one fairly quickly. So before the x squared is positive, so you know you'll have x and x. 1 is a prime number 1, so you know you're going to have 1 and 1. And because this is negative 2x, the only way to come up with negative 2 is to have both of these be negative numbers. So you have x is for both of those to be negative. For this to be positive, and for the sum of these two to become negative 2, these must both be negative. So you have x minus 1, which is x minus 1. This simplifies to x minus 1 squared is equal to 0. In this case, you can solve that for x, and you'll be left with x is equal to, take the square root of both sides. Square root of 0 is 0, which leaves you with x minus 1 is equal to 0. So add 1 to both sides. That'll leave you with x is equal to 1. And that's the only x that's equal, which means that you only have one solution. You can go back and plug this x back into here. It'll leave you with y minus 5 times 1 is 5 plus 8 is equal to 0. It means that y plus 3 is equal to 0. That means that y is equal to negative 3, which is only one solution. So the intersection between that parabola and the line happens at x is equal to 1, y is equal to negative 3. It only happens once, which means that C is the correct answer. There is exactly one solution. Problem 15, the functions g and h are defined above. What is the value of h of 0? And it's a very simple problem. They're just trying to trip you up with the function notation. All this is saying is plug in 0 for x. So we will go ahead and do so. Plug x appears here, so go ahead and plug 0 in for x. So g of 0, because we're plugging 0 in, is equal to 2 times 0 minus 1, which means that g of 0 is equal to negative 1. Go ahead and plug that information in here, which means that h of 0 is equal to 1 minus negative 1, which means that h of 0, 1 minus negative 1, is equal to 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. H of 0 is equal to 2, which is answer D. Problem 16 is if A is a solution to the equation above and A is greater than 0, what is the value of A? That's a long way of saying solve the equation above for x and give us the solution that is positive. Make it when x is positive, find the value of x. So go ahead and factor this equation to find the solution. So there's been a lot of factoring on this SAT. I've said it a number of times. I will do another video on factoring if anyone would like. So how do you factor this? Positive up front, that means that you must have x's here. Negative 12, find, what's the multiple of 12. In this case, since we have a 1 in this place, you know that you must have, there's a number of ways to get 12. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, or 3 times 4. So you'll have that times 4. To get that positive here, you know that the 3 must be negative and the 4 must be positive, so that the sum of these two, negative 3 plus 4 is equal to 1. We'll give you that 1 in the x place. So this is the factored solution. So now you'll get two solutions for x. You'll have x minus 3 is equal to 0 and x plus 4 is equal to 0. In this case, add 3 to both sides. X is equal to 3. In this case, subtract 4 from both sides. X is equal to negative 4. They're asking for when the solution, they're calling it A. When the solution is greater than 0, that negative 4 doesn't work because it's less than 0. The answer is x is equal to 3, so you'd bubble in 3 for this problem. Problem 17, the sum of negative 2x squared plus x plus 31 and 3x squared plus 7x minus 8 can be written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are constants. What is the value of a plus b plus c? This is another simple problem that they've gone out of their way to make sound complicated. Basically, it means add these two things together, right? They're just saying the sum of these two things and what is in the place before the x squared, what is the constant in the place before the x, and what is the constant, and add those three things together. That's what this is coming up with when it says add a, b, and c together. Let's go ahead and do that. It's easier to write these, as a simple, as a 1 over the other sum. So we'll do negative 2 x squared plus, it's easier if you just see this as 1x plus 31 over, here's your second equation, is 3x squared plus 7x minus 8. So go ahead and take the sum of these two things. Negative 2 plus 3 is equal to 1. X squared plus 8x plus 31 minus 8 is 23. So what they're calling this is they're saying, if you look at what they've given you here, A is the x squared term, B is the x, and C is the constant. So you have A is equal to 1, B is equal to 8, C is equal to 23, and they're asking for A plus B plus C, so they're asking for 1 plus 8 plus 23 is equal to 1 plus 8 is 9, plus 23 is 32, and that is A plus B plus C, so that is your final answer, and that is what you'd bubble in on your test. Problem 18, if x comma y satisfies the system of equations above, what is the value of y? Just like a couple problems earlier in this SAT, when they say this satisfies the system of equations, what is the value of? That all translates to solve for y, solve the system of equations for y. And they've done you a favor here by listing them one on top of the other. You can see that if you take this and just do a sum of these two system of equations, this will cancel out, negative x plus x is just 0. So your x goes away pretty easily. So you're left with, adding these two together, you're left with 3y plus y is equal to negative 3.5 plus 9.5. And again, y is the only thing left, so it makes this pretty easy to solve. That'll be 4y is equal to negative 3.5 plus 9.5 is 6, which means that y is equal to 6 over 4, and you can bubble that in. Problem 19, a startup company opened with 8 employees. The company's growth plan assumes that 2 new employees will be hired each quarter for the first 5 years. If an equation is written in the form y is equal to ax plus b, you might be more familiar with seeing this y is equal to mx plus b. You're just saying the slope-intercept form of the line. To represent the number of employees y employed by the company x quarters after the company opened, what is the value of b? So what they're asking for is the intercept. What is the initial condition? So they've given a lot of information here about, how many employees are going to be hired and when they're hired over how many years. But the important thing is the startup company opened with 8 employees. That is, if you were to make a graph of number of employees, you start at whatever times 0, and here's your initial 8, and then there's some increase here, but 8 is your intercept. It is your b, which means that the answer is simply 8 given in the first sentence of that problem. So 8's the answer, you can bubble it in. Problem 20, final problem of section 3. In the circle above, point A is the center and the length of arc BC is 2/5 of the circumference. So this arc length here is 2/5 of the total circumference of the circle. What is the value of x, this angle here? And because this arc length is 2/5 and this angle effectively defines that arc length, that means that that value of x is 2/5 of the total angle of the circle. Now, a total circle is 360 degrees. And because this x is 2/5 of that, you take that x is equal to that 360 times 2 over 5, the 2/5. So the hardest part of this problem is probably, because you're in the no calculator section, figuring out 360 times 2 over 5. I'd recommend, take the 360, divide by 5, do the long division on that. 360. So 36 divided by 5, goes in evenly 7 times with a remainder of 1. 10, 5 goes into 10 twice, leaves you with 72. So that's 36 divided by 5. Effectively what we did was we did 360 divided by 5, and now we need to multiply by 2. So that means that we have 72 times 2 is equal to 144 is our value of x. So go ahead and bubble that in, and you're done with section 3. that's the end of section 3. Thank you for watching. If this helped you, please do like, subscribe. Like I said, I hope to upload section 4 soon, so you get a notification whenever that comes out. I said a number of times throughout this video, I was going to go back, upload some more detail on how to solve some of the specific problems. If you'd like to see those, please do comment. It's kind of motivation for me to upload those, and it really is satisfying to know that I'm helping people out with these videos. So if there's anything that I had mentioned that you'd like to see me upload, or anything in general as you're going through your other SAT tests that you'd like to see me upload, please do comment on that. It really helps me guide these videos in a useful way. So again, thank you for watching. Give it a like, give it a subscribe to get the next video. Thanks a lot.